I got my homeboy Pete Frank with me, and we letting everybody know we got a dream. Yo, stay focused. Keep moving forward. It's on the way. Keep that dream alive. If you got a dream, don't look to the left, nor the right, nor the wrong.
Your fate is in Jesus. Completion is here before you even begin. Dreaming big of my life in the future. Already knowing that it's not far. Having the passion to work towards Jesus. I'm gonna keep my faith and swagger going hard. Don't close your eyes. Just look straight. You don't have to fear more.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Yolanda Jerry Show. I am your host, Yolanda, and also Happy New Year. This is our first Thursday in the year. I'm excited about 2022 and all that comes with it. So, look, I have a very special guest tonight, and I'm excited to have her. But before we get into who we're going to be talking to and having this conversation with tonight, I'm going to ask you to please share this broadcast. Please tag some family and friends, because the topic that we're going to be talking about tonight is going to be very heavy, hard hitting, but it's going to help someone in this world today. So again, share this broadcast, tag someone, let your friends and family know that it's about to go down on a Dr. Yolanda Jerry Show, and we'll be right back.
Welcome to the Dr. Yolanda Jerry Show, where you will hear stories from people who have experienced hell on earth and have walked past hell to share their stories. You will also hear what they are doing now and how their businesses, nonprofits, and ministries were birthed from their past trauma. So let's empower the world, one story at a time. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Yolanda Jerry.
All right, we are back. We back. So listen, tonight, let me just tell you what our topic is about. Our topic tonight, we're going to be talking about sold for sex. Yes, you heard me. Sold for sex. S-E-X. Yep, you heard it right here on the Dr. Yolanda Jerry Show. We ain't going to be sugarcoating nothing tonight. So please share this broadcast and invite somebody in, because somebody needs to hear about this tonight. So let me tell you about my special guest. My special guest is by the name of Miss Sharon Robbins. She is a survivor, a public speaker, a public educator, spiritual life coach, and founder of Jubilee Havens. Her passion and commitment to bring light and provide refuge to those in the world that are suffering fuels her mission. Miss Robbins works tirelessly and endlessly, actively training and teaching in the trenches of human trafficking. I'm going to say that again. In the trenches of human trafficking, on how to maneuver within the streets to provide victims opportunity so that they would otherwise have never known. Jubilee Havens operates with a gifted board of expertise, working with ministries out of Tennessee and Alabama to help ensure that their local street ministry here in Mississippi is actively effective. She is responsible for spearheading the present-day orchestration and development of a network database for local, regional, national, and international usage. Furthermore, Ms. Robbins served 2 years as the president of an anti-human trafficking organization. She spoke at a trauma-informed care conference in 2016 in Jackson, Mississippi, to social workers and counselors. Sharon is working on her trauma-informed care certification in counseling. In addition, she was the recipient of the Teen Challenge Appreciation Award, a Christian nonprofit organization established to support addicts in recovering and overcoming addiction. She has an 8-year leadership role coordinating their annual banquet event, The Night with the King. Furthermore, in 2017, she was a nominee in the nonprofit area for Success Women's Conference. And also in 2021, she was in the Gulf Coast Women's Magazine as one of the 100 most successful women to know. So without further ado, we are going to bring on Miss Sharon Robbins. Hello, Sharon. How are you?
I am well. Good evening to you.
Good evening. So we are excited about the conversation that we're going to have tonight, talking about soul for sex. I want to say thank you for those who are tuning in right now. We have Crystal Gilner, we have Carrie Boylan, we have Richard Casey, we have Genesis. Who else do we have? We have so many people tuning in right now. We have Paula Favre, we have Brenda Young. We also have a couple of other people too that are now tuning in. So thank you all so much for tuning in this evening. So Sharon, I always like to start my show off with talking about, let's get to know who the individual is. And usually I always go back to, let's start with the childhood. So if you don't mind telling us a little bit about where you're from and a little bit about your childhood, if that's okay.
Well, I was born into a military family, so we traveled a lot. So up until the time I was 5 to 8 years old, a lot of trauma took place before we moved to Germany for about 5 years, because my dad was actually transferred over to Germany for a little while. But from the time I was 5 until I was about 17, I was sexually molested by my dad continuously, which actually set me up later to be a target, emotionally, mentally, having no major spiritual background at the time. When I became a teenager and left home after my parents had split up for a couple years and then remarried, that's probably about the time I was working in a restaurant and became a target to be recruited into what most people thought back in the day, 40 something, it's about 40 years ago, that being a dancer in a club was fashionable. Well, there's a lot of darkness behind the doors that go on in a nightclub, let me just tell you. I didn't realize or actually associate with where I was from growing up, because we moved around so much, a year here, 2 years there, 5 years there. I didn't really realize until I was in my late 20s actually where I was from, born, you know what I mean? Because of probably all the trauma. And when I was probably 8 is when I took on a second identity to cover up some of the things that were happening at home that nobody was aware of. So actually, it was like when I left home to go to school, I became somebody else. And then when I got back home, I literally went back into Sharon mode. Eventually, that identity grew and grew with the trauma that I endured from things happening in the house and the home, and the personalities and the dynamics of my parents and what was going on in their world. And that one of those personalities became stronger than the second. So there for a while, I had 3 personalities. But I was never diagnosed with, DID. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Sharon, so your trauma started very early. Ooh, like you said, when you were a child. And
5.
the unfortunate part is it was by a loved one, so a relative. And
Yeah.
so, whoo, man, I kind of feel you there. It wasn't necessarily by a parent, but as we had conversations before, I was sexually assaulted too, molested by a family friend at an early age and as a teen. So I can definitely understand how having to deal with that and how it filters over into your lifestyle as you get older. Now, you said you did
Yes.
mention that you went from being molested, and then as you got older, you went into, the nightclub scene. Is that where
Mhm.
all of the, it was at the onset of where the human trafficking started?
Yes.
Okay, so before we get into that, I do want to ask the question though, how has your relationship with your dad, or did that ever change, or was there any healing between you and your relative, or no?
Yes, on my end.
Okay.
Yes, I am. Yeah, because I was actually introduced to a counselor in the early 90s, which I'd already had 3 children by this time, married, my first time. And it was my mother in law, literally, which I call Mama Faye, who actually knew my stuff the moment she met me. And I didn't even know my stuff. She was very much discerning. And she introduced me to a counselor to help me with my stuff, but she didn't realize how much stuff was on my plate until the counselor, you know, was sharing, I need to see Sharon, how's Sharon doing? And then the rest of the stuff came out as my children got older, and I think she was kind of blown away of how much extra stuff was on there. She just knew that I was sexually abused. She knew that much. Well, that can be a broad span depending on if you were done as a child or someone used you as a young adult or even as a young woman. But sexual abuse is sexual abuse.
Correct. I definitely understand that and do know that as well. So that part, that portion, that journey didn't really start probably till many years later, is what I'm
Yeah, I
hearing.
was I was recruited into the club at 18.
Oh wow. Woo. Okay, so let's talk about this club, you know, because that's what it's called, a club, or it's the secret society, because
Mhm.
they do a lot of what they do is they do underground work, that
Yes.
nobody knows about. And they do a lot of them do it very well until they get caught, or there's a raid or something like that happens. So tell us about your journey when it came to you getting caught up into that world.
Well, I was working for a restaurant. I had graduated at 17, about to be 18. I graduated early. Um, and I was coming into the realization that I had to survive on my own. But I think, you know, I do believe that people who have trauma from a young age, a middle age, or whatever, they have this an innate ability to survive. I have, now that I have evaluated my own life looking back, I realized that I was a freeze as a child. I was a runner from adolescence until my late 20s. And then I became a fighter. But I was fighting for my children at that time before I started fighting for myself and others. Does that make sense?
Right, right.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
So go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say I was at a restaurant when a gentleman befriended me. I was on the morning shift, and he came in same time every day, ordered the same thing. So I learned his appetite and what he wanted every single time. He befriended me. He was an older gentleman, probably old enough to be my grandfather. Um, and when he befriended me, one of the things people don't realize is even the grooming as a child that I got from my dad that he didn't realize he was doing actually became a second session of grooming, of people paying attention to what your needs are and wanting to meet your basic needs, not knowing what their motives are. So,
That's true. I'm
so
glad you
that's,
said.
yeah, because that's actually how I got recruited, because I was a single girl in an apartment by myself, trying to make a living, trying to move on with life, ignore everything that I'd been through. Matter of fact, I'd blocked a lot of it out. You know what I'm saying? And I just was just on this mission of just survival. And he knew that. So he offered me a job, and they called it moonlighting at that time in my history. and I joined the club, didn't have any idea that what I'd be doing, and I was trained on what to do. And then later, probably 6 months into the job, the owner literally pulled us in, and I was fearful because I'd never been on a date out of a workplace before.
Right.
So he tag teamed me with another young lady, to go on double date. That's what they called it, dates. Um, and you know, that's how that started. And then men that we had been with, we were literally chauffeured to the hotel by my recruiter, who I didn't know was the chauffeur of the boss. And he chauffeured us to the hotels, picked us up an hour later, and then we went back to work. And this went on for a good year and a half, 2 years, I think.
Oh my goodness. Ooh, look, we're about to get a little deeper into that because I want to know. I know some people don't like to share, but people need to know how real this issue is. It's not talked about enough. We don't share about it enough. And I think by you being, a survivor of human trafficking, it would encourage other people to come forth too, who will eventually have enough courage to know that they're not alone. So before we go a little deeper into your story, we're going to go to a commercial break and then we'll be right back. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that, of course, is Go Fig Company. So tonight's show is sponsored by them, of course. And if you're looking for any company to help you with your digital automation, your website, your graphics, anything when it comes to a virtual assistant or executive assistant, they are the company to go to. You know why I give them a high five and a whoop whoop is because a lot of the things that you see with my brand, my show, and the things that I have going on, they have a deep hand in everything that makes me look successful. So Go Fit Company CEO and founder is Rita M. Green. And if you need to get in touch with them, their website is www.gofig, which is GEAUXFIG.com. Again, that's www.gofig, which is GEAUXFIG.com. Reach out to them if you need some help. All right, Sharon. So, before we went to commercial break, we talked about, how your journey started with human trafficking. And for those who are just tuning in right now, I want to say thank you for tuning into the Dr. Yolanda Jerry Show. If you just coming in, make sure you go watch the replay to catch it from the very beginning. Also, please share this broadcast out because tonight we are talking with Sharon Robbins about being sold for sex. We're talking about stuff that happens in human trafficking every day. So, Sharon, you told us how it started, what you call a club, where you basically it's like you was initiated in. You had
Mm-hmm.
a friend that befriended you. Then next thing you know, it's like y'all going on this date, but it's really not a date. And because another person was there, and then it led you to being, transported to a hotel, and then you being taken advantage of, and then you going back to work. So kind of lay out that, what that picture looked like for us, because somebody might be like, oh, there might be some, just they might even not even think that's a serious crime, but it really is. So take us through that journey a little bit and give us an overview of how that continued to happen, and when did you realize that you were really in a bad situation?
that's a that's a lot, because so many dynamics were happening at that time. Because I was still working the day shift and working the club at night, to make money to survive. And I have to say that I think it was several months into what was happening, I realized, but I had a difficulty separating reality and what was happening. Does that make sense? Because it took me drinking a half a bottle of schnapps to even get up on stage almost every single night. And I think it was months in that I realized that I don't know how I got here. I really didn't know how I got there at that time because I hadn't been in a counseling session. I hadn't realized, what was really going on. I was just being the second personality on stage and being the other personality, Sharon, in the restaurant, being a waitress. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that other personality got stronger. And some of the people that knew me then didn't even have no idea, what was going on. Probably didn't even know that all that childhood stuff happened. Um, and it was when I started having men on the dates tell me, how much do you get of this? And I'm like, I'm not quite sure. Maybe 25. Are you serious? And he's charging me this much? Girl, you need to be doing this on your own so you're getting all the money. I had clients encouraging me to do this on my own, which did happen, by the way, because after I ran again, but there was a pivotal moment where literally someone came in from my past, sat at the front table when I walked out on stage, and that was a pivotal moment for me. My first offender was sitting at the front table.
Whoa. Okay.
And I was in shock because I had not seen them in months or something like that. And I went and sat with them. And the whole thing is that you buy this non-alcoholic drink for the girl, and she has all these sticks in her cup, and so many sticks mean how much money you get. And then the more drinks you get, the more sticks you get. You know what I'm saying? And then I sat with him and asked him, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I had no idea you worked here. Do you know who I'm talking about?" My dad.
Right, because you said that's the first person that basically
Yes.
violated you. My God.
Yeah. But he had no idea what was going on. I never told him because, I didn't have this trust thing going on with him. When I realized that that's really not how a dad is supposed to love his daughter. When I had that realization at 17, and it did take till 17 to get that because of the secrecy of the whole deal. You know what I'm saying? That I didn't have a trust for him. So he did not know. My family still to this day does not know that I was sold for sex or later became a call girl for the men that said that they would pay me outright. Nobody would else take a cut of what I was making to survive.
Wow. Well, you know what, Sharon? I'm going to commend you on having the courage to speak out today because you say they didn't even know. So now it's out in the atmosphere. It's going to be out in the virtual world, and they're going to get wind of this, and they're going to realize how much it's impacted you.
Yeah.
So your dad was probably there for different means, but then he saw you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so was that a wake-up call for him?
I never asked him because I don't know how the rest of the conversation was. Like I said, drinking a half a bottle of schnapps to get
Yeah,
up on stage.
you was under
Yeah,
the influence big time.
I was under the influence, so I don't even recall the rest of the conversation, but I do remember going to the table, sitting with him. He bought a drink to have conversation with me, and he got up and left. And that was a pivotal moment for me because I believe within days, if not that night, I did pack up my things and I left and I never returned to dancing.
Wow. So let me ask you this, even though he saw you, I guess that was probably part of the shame, right? Knowing that now I have a relative that knows that I'm out here doing this. So that triggers something in your brain, say you need to get out of this situation, and you got your bags, you packed up and you left.
Yep.
So now that you have left, I remember you saying not long ago that you stepped out and started doing your own thing to make this money. So how did that I mean, how long did
Well,
you do that and how did that continue?
well, that actually continued. I have to say that continued on for about a year. The regulars that came in to see some of the girls dance and stuff like that, and they asked for you by name, by your stage name, and we would sit with them. Some of them would pass their numbers, and we were not supposed to tell the boss, that kind of thing. That did happen. I'm sure it happened with many of the girls that did side things. You know what I'm saying? It did happen with me, but I never actually indulged in that arena until I left. When I left, there were people that would call me or ask me to call them at certain times when they would be in town, or they would pay for my gas to travel to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or north of Miss Biloxi, just places like that where they would get a hotel, and Sharon became a car girl for about a year. hmm
Wow,
to survive.
that's deep. So man, so you went from being a part of this special club,
hmm
uh, and then you were pushed into doing it on your own because
hmm
of the reality check when you seen your dad.
hmm
Now, as far as the human trafficking world, though, before we moved into how you got out of it, totally. What are some of the things that happen? I know you mentioned about the alcohol, and you started painting this picture about the straws. How many straws you got to determine how under the influence you were, so people knew probably at what point they should be able to take you, right?
hmm
Is that okay? So paint that picture for us a little bit. How did all of that keep going? Like, what did it look like? What do you know what an actual human trafficker looks like, or do they look any kind of way? How do you
Nope.
know you're caught into this I'm gonna call it a cult, whatever you want to call it. But how you get caught up into this club and not even know or see the signs? Are there any signs and the red flags before you get caught into this club?
I think that a majority of the recall that I have from that time in my world, let's say, like I said, I wasn't Sharon at that time. I was the other person most of the time. When I was at the club, I was the other girl, and she had a name. And Sharon, it was there was something about, depending on the atmosphere in which I was in. If I was in one of those threatening atmosphere, the other personality would come up. And then when I was in a normal atmosphere, Sharon would come up, you know? In that season of time in my world, I realized what was happening, but when I did ask questions, it was kind of pushed aside. So I just learned to keep my mouth shut. That freeze time came in again. To this day, I am amazed at how my mind has, through my 7 to 10 year counseling session with the counselor, it took that long to undo the mind stuff. But probably it took that long because at the time I started my counseling, I was raising 3 little babies by myself. I was a single mom when that counseling went full-fledged into high gear. So she didn't get to see me all the time because I was so concerned about raising 3 little people. You know what I mean? And I think that's why it took so long for her to work on Sharon and get rid of the other personality and realize that a lot of stuff that was a domino effect that happened in my world was due to trauma from a young age, um, confliction, as well as silence. You're to be seen, not heard. So I was very much an introvert at a young age.
Wow. So what
Nobody knew. Nobody believes that to this day, but I
Right.
am.
I know, because I mean, now we can't stop you from talking. I'm just playing. But so when I think about this, you basically were in a cage. You know how you have this bird that's in a cage and you feel like they can't get out. And then you mentioned about other personalities. So, you were so under the influence of other things, other chemicals, you didn't even know who you were. So there were probably times where you didn't remember anything that was going on. You don't even know if you fought, to get out. You don't even know if, you tried to get out, at certain times because some of the things that you couldn't remember. And
Mhm.
so now I want to ask you this question. Because you mentioned you had 3 children. So
Mhm.
were any of your children a result of you going through this human trafficking?
Not a one, praise the Lord. But children are a gift from the Lord, no matter what they
Mm-hmm.
are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I've actually, yeah, all my children were from my first marriage.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, they were. But I have, in that time span between 17 and running away from um, the trafficking and the call girl session of my world, I was date raped once and had an abortion because of that. Then I was engaged to be married before I met my first husband. And I did become pregnant, and he wanted to abort it. So I've actually had 2 abortions, and I have repented for that because I'm not a believer in it unless it is a very traumatic rape where that would be a trigger for that young lady. I don't feel like that's just not my stance anymore. I was in a mess is the reason why
Right.
I even did that. I was in a mess.
Right. Well, thank
Yeah.
God that your children weren't a result of, being human trafficked. So how has your relationship been with your children through all of this? And before you answer that, explain to us what that exit looked like. Like, were you really decided to leave that whole world in entirety? How did you escape that whole world and start your journey for getting counseling and building a relation, the relationship or trying to build a relationship with your children? How did you escape all of that?
Well, it was probably a few months before I met my first husband, was when I had a realization. I actually had a local guy that was a regular. And, as crazy as it sounds, you know how some people talk out one side of their mouth and they're telling you something different on here? He
Mm,
was kind of like that. He
mm,
liked me coming over, and, and then in the second hand, he was also trying to talk me out of continuing.
mm-hmm. Got
You
you.
know what I'm saying? You're better than this. You don't need to continue this. Da 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 da. So he had a little bit of influence in that.
Mm,
And when I felt that pressure, I mean, I used to have a dream as a child, this reoccurring, traumatizing, scary dream as a child. Well, when he started talking that way, like this is what you're wanting, but this is what you're telling me, that pressure dream came back again. And I
okay.
became a runner again.
Mm,
And I actually moved away right after I met my husband at a club that I was working at as a cocktail waitress. I met him, but I was in the process of planning to move to Florida at the time.
okay.
And I did do that, but I was only there 3 weeks, and he ended up talking me back. And he was this Prince Charming silver tongue. So I ran to him, but then I ran away from him and then ran back to him. And then we ended up married and had 3 children.
Wow. But by you going back to him, even though you ran by, you going back to him and having your 3 children, that
Mhm.
basically was your scapegoat away from
Mhm.
the world, because now you have somebody that you have to confide or talk to when you're doing things throughout the day or when you're out and about, those kind of things to just to kind of keep in check. So I'm sure that was a big part of you saying, okay, I'm done with this world, because if not, then my husband's not going to be with me, or I could possibly lose my children, in the process.
All right. Oh yeah, that's a whole different story. He still doesn't know to this day that I was ever sold.
Oh, well, he going to know now.
Uh, I doubt it.
Because
uh,
this show is live streaming all over the place. So if he doesn't know, I'm sure he gonna get wind of it sooner or later. Uh,
well, he was even. I mean, after I married him, I found out something I didn't know. So I was naive in some things, but not naive in street stuff. You know what I'm saying?
right, right.
But because I found out after I married him, he was a dealer.
Wow.
I just went from the fire and pan to the fire. Now I was paranoid about the house being raided and my child being taken.
Right, right. And like that's a whole nother story in
I
itself.
know, right?
The big thing though about this though, even though it probably led into something else, at least you were able to escape from that secret society,
Yes,
of being sold for sex,
yes,
right?
yes.
So your relationship with your children, I mean, because I know trauma follows us. You talked about you had to go to a therapist, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because people think that going to a therapist means you're crazy.
Mm-mm,
No, not so. Going to
mm-mm.
a therapist means that you recognize that you need to heal, you need the help, and it really is a strength saying that, you know what, I know I can't do this by myself. So 7 to 10 years of going through therapy and healing. I know that was probably a lot of peeling back the onion, a lot of bruising emotionally, and all those different things. Um,
Mhm.
but what would you say to somebody who's fearing going, who fears wanting to go to a therapist, or who fears wanting to tell their story,
Mhm.
when it comes to human trafficking? Or what would you say to that person that's trying to get out?
Well, the first thing on the trying to get out is that if you have an opportunity to run, run, and run to somebody that can help.
Hmm.
I just kept running until finally I ran into my mother-in-law. She was an angel sent from above. You know what I'm saying? She
Right.
literally was. So she's the one that pushed me to get counseling.
Mm,
And because I was raising children, she says, Sharon, you need this. You
wow.
need to find out who you really are because you don't know who you are.
Mm,
And you want your children to know who you are.
wow.
And that's what she said to me. And it was because of her that I stuck with it. And even when I went months without seeing a counselor, I would have moments. I call them moments. I
Hmm.
have moments. I don't have them near like I used to, but I have moments where I just need somebody to talk to.
Right.
And I would have those moments, and she could see it on my face. Sharon, when was the last time you saw her?
Wow.
And she'd make the call, set
Hmm.
it up, and she would push me. And I promise you, by the time she passed away in '06, I had gone through so much healing, and I know it was because she pushed me. And it was because of the counselor who just recently passed away
Mm,
last year.
I'm sorry.
Um, I don't have her to call out to if I need prayer, but I will tell you that her husband has been magnificent. He has donated to Jubilee Havens. He has been there if I needed prayer because he kind of was the father figure to their marriage for me.
Mm, wow.
Yeah.
So your mother-in-law played a very important role in your healing journey, and she
Yes.
pushed you and she encouraged you. And what I want people to understand is, if you run, like you said, run to someone. I mean, it doesn't matter how long you keep running, run to somebody that will say the right thing to you to encourage you to get the help, because
Yes.
people say no, but trust me, there's always a yes.
Yes.
Always a yes. You know, you just, so don't give up. That's the biggest thing. Do not give up. There's always a yes. And now we got Sharon Robbins here. She's definitely going to say yes,
Yes.
right? Because this is her calling. You know, she's going through being sold for sex. She's going through escaping. She's going through the healing process. And we're not talking about 1-2 years. We're talking about 7 to 10 years of her having to go through this healing when it came to going through therapy. But she had someone to push her and encourage her because her kids were important. She knew that her kids were important to her. And she had to push you to make you realize that it's not about Sharon, it's about my children. Because if I don't take care of me, then my children are going to be affected. And guess what? If your children are affected, you might find your children in that same cycle.
Yeah.
So I commend you for going to therapy, taking the time to listen. You know, even though your therapist and your mother-in-law is still not here, you know, the husband is still supporting because he knows your story and he knows your heart. He knows what you're trying to do to change the crime that's happening in the world today. So
Yeah.
Sharon, before we get into all the things that you have going on and talking about Jubilee Havens, we're going to go into another commercial break and then we'll be right back to finish up.
Okay.
All right, and we are back. So the video that you have seen, that was sponsored by myself and my company and by men who walk past hell. So look, I'm excited to mention this and say this. Those men became #1 bestsellers today. Amazon #1 bestsellers in a matter of hours. So please, if you see any of those men, please congratulate them. Let them know that you see them, because all of these men have stories to tell, right? They all gone through something, and we all need to overcome. We need to heal in some form or fashion. And if you're a male, these men's stories will probably help change your life. So if you want to copy the ebook, go to Amazon. If you want a copy of the actual paperback, you can pre-order that copy now. You can go to www.hiswalkpasthell.com. That's HISWALKPASTHELL.com. Or you can reach out to any of those authors to get an autographed copy and also a free gift. So, all right. So let's get back to it, Sharon. So this is the part of the show where we shift from, the real stuff that you went through, and we talked about your journey as far as being sold for sex and how you were able to escape and go through your healing journey. And now you're at a place where now you're helping the same people that you were back then. So let's talk about Jubilee Havens. Let's talk about the things that you all have going on and also how people can reach out and contact you. So this is the floor is yours.
Okay, so before I do that, can I tell you one more pivotal moment that happened to me just before we launched the vision of
Go ahead.
Jubilee Havens?
And the
Okay,
floor is yours.
okay. So while I was president of the anti-human trafficking organization that I was part of, I went on a street ministry with another organization that was trying to get the organization I was with to partner with them. They asked who wanted to go on the street ministry with us in New Orleans, the clubs, the strip joints, et cetera, et cetera. And immediately, as soon as that question came out, my arm went up and I had no idea what the heck I was doing.
Okay.
Okay. So when I went on that, I am not kidding you. It was so strategic, and I have to give glory to the Lord. He was very strategic about this. When I went on that, it was literally at that time 30 years since that I had stepped foot into a strip joint. And I had the most amazing experience one on one with these ladies, just ministering. That's all we were allowed to do is minister, ask them if they needed prayers, give them little gifts and stuff like that. And I had this visual pop up like nobody's business, like I was on the other side of the fence looking at myself 30 years ago.
Wow.
And
Wow.
then I realized what was happening. And on that ride home from New Orleans that night, I had this long conversation with the Lord and asked him, "What are you doing? You are setting me up." And it's exactly what he was doing. So
Oh
now
yeah.
I'm on the other side and I'm trying to help these ladies. Even if I'm ministering and they're not ready yet, hopefully they will be ready. Does that make sense?
That's
So,
right. You know, it's always at the times we least expect or don't expect him for him to show up. And when he shows up, he'd be like, that's like a divine connection with you and God at that moment. He's like, it's a God moment. That's what I call it.
yes,
You know, a
yes,
God moment. And so that's
yes,
exactly what he did. He came in, intervened, said, look, listen to me, daughter. I got something for you. And if you don't want to listen, I'm gonna show you just by you being here. So he
yes,
used you in that moment. So that moment, like you said, that was a God moment.
yes, yes.
Amen.
Yeah,
Amen.
because I actually, at that time, there were no more of those on the Gulf Coast, only in New Orleans and in Florida, and a few in Alabama hidden away that nobody, a lot of people don't know about. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But they're there, and
Right.
there are hurting women there, and most of them are traumatized, and some people tend to think that this is what they chose to do, and that is not the case. You cannot convince me that a young lady woke up one day and said, "I'm going to sell myself." She was coached, she was groomed, she was traumatized to become a target, however that looks. Does that make sense? Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah,
So that's what basically pushed you, that God moment, that God wink that Carrie says that you got pushed you into
yes,
starting your own organization.
yes,
Wow.
yes.
So tell us about Jubilee Havens. Tell us what you all do, you know, what's coming up, and like I said earlier, how people can reach out to you.
Yes. Well, everybody needs to know that, January is National Human Trafficking Awareness Month. So this is very close to my heart to always try. If we don't get nothing done in February and March, we will try to get something done in January to bring awareness, education, and as I told Yolanda, yes, I want to be on your show because I want to talk about this. National Human Trafficking Awareness Month is January 11th. That is the official day. And we need to be educated. We need to be aware because it's actually happened under everybody's nose. And some people don't know what it looks like. And you can't really put a true identity on what it looks like because you have three types of trafficking. You have the street side of it, where a lot of those street are survival sex. Okay. And some of that might be gang related. Okay. And the ones that are survival, it's literally about the fact that you might have aged out. They don't want nothing else to do with you, but now that's all you know how to do. So you're going to sell yourself to meet your bills or your addiction, because I promise you there's some kind of addiction going on while you're being trafficked. And it could be alcohol, drugs, heroin, cocaine, you name it, it's out there. It's more so now than it was 40 years ago. You know what I'm saying? It
Wow.
is very more so. Matter of fact, even my story, I know I know close people to me that have had it more horrific than I did being sold.
Wow.
And I'm honored to know them because their story's different, but it's still the same. You know
Mhm.
what I mean?
Right, right,
Jubilee Havens is all about providing safe haven for the victim survivors of human trafficking.
right,
We want to help them get to a safe place. We need them to get to a safe place. I need them to get to a safe place because I know how many years I ran.
right.
And some people, the average lifespan of some, depending on the circumstances, which leads me to the second level of trafficking, which is you're being, you know, pimped out, trafficker, daddy, papa, boyfriend, whatever. That's the middle stage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're on circuits all over the states.
Mm.
Okay, then you got the higher end that actually you have clubs, casinos,
Wait,
hotels, famous hotels.
say that again, because some people think we on the coast, right? But and they call us the mini Vegas. So just imagine how much trafficking is happening in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and it's legal there.
See?
Yeah, it's not legal here, but it's legal there.
Wow.
So if it's legal there, they're trying to make it legal here, but we're believing against that. Just saying. I mean, because even certain parts of the United States are trying to say that prostitution is legal because that's their choice. Yeah, but well, did you ask them when it started
Or how it started. I'm
or
sure
how it started?
I'm sure they
Yes.
just say wake up one day say, "Oh, I want to be a prostitute. Or I want to be human traffic." I don't it don't happen like that.
Well, I have to say that when I was with the other organizations, a news person actually took me to a site where there was trafficking on the Gulf Coast, and she asked me a lot of questions on what would I do, what is the next steps, what do these people need to know about, blah blah blah, and so on. And basically, she even asked me the next question off the record. Sharon, how do you know that if she's 21 that she didn't choose this? And I said, well, if you sit down with her and listen to her, instead of pressing her for questions, eventually her story will come out and you'll find out she was trafficked from the age of 16 or younger.
Wow.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So we do need to pay attention. The news is out there, and you notice that, you're seeing stories periodically here on the Gulf Coast. But I have an app that actually gives me, it's a Google alerts when there's a trafficking story here and there. And I try to pay attention to those and I post them on our Jubilee Havens Facebook page so that people are aware that it is happening, even though it might be 2 states over, it's happening. Then when it happens here or locally, like it did last year, there was a couple of raids and sting operations right here in Mississippi.
And
We
right
post,
on the Gulf Shores too, with
yes,
college students. Mm-hmm.
yes, yes. So we have to be aware. And if you need education awareness, there are many organizations that would be glad to help. Shared Hope International, um, and then you've got the Polaris Project. You can go and you can look. Our website has that information of the red flags. Our Jubilee Havens Facebook page, we try to post every now and then. Matter of fact, I just posted a survivor friend of mine's story on the Jubilee Havens Facebook page. Hannah, awesome young lady. It's just, oh my gosh. Anyway, so Jubilee Havens is all about trying to get that young lady or that young man, because yes, it happens to men too, it happens to boys. And boys, in some cases, go for more money than girls because the younger they look, the more perverted the buyer.
Mm. Woo wee. Wow. I didn't know that.
Yes, yes.
Mm.
Yes. So we are on a we do have a system now where we can tap into finding a national umbrella that actually helps different age groups, even though our age group is 18 and above. We only help ladies who have been sex trafficked 18 and above. And people need to know that. But that doesn't mean we don't have the resources to get
form
them
out.
where they need to be,
That's right.
because our main job is to provide. And if you look up in the dictionary what provide means, it means finances, food, clothing, shelter, etc. So
Right.
we will provide them to get to a long-term safe haven for healing. We have a temporary respite, but we want to push them into the long term to get the healing that they need. And usually most of those programs are 1 to 2 years, because I promise you it takes that long to start unraveling the bad so that you can see the good in yourself that should not have happened, the bad stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And before you go into, thanks for sharing all that. That was a lot of knowledge that you just shared I mean, even for me and the other people that are watching. So thank you for putting that information out in the atmosphere. Can you give us at least one or two statistics of, what human trafficking looks like?
Well, it's gotten up to $150 billion a year in revenue.
Wow.
That's ridiculous. For slavery, modern day slavery is what this is. In
Wow.
other words, these people don't care about the souls in which they are selling. It's all about revenue.
It's all
It's all
about,
about revenue.
wow.
Yeah.
So,
And I realize now why Satan hates me so much.
right. So, and that's where it comes into the love, not the love of money is the root to all evil. And
And yeah,
that's where human trafficking
yeah,
falls.
yeah.
So, Sharon, before we close out the show, let us know um, what did Jubilee Havens has going on, and how can people reach out to you or the organization?
Yes. Well, you have my email address. You can also go to our website. You can go to our Facebook page. We have our address. You can mail us a check to help us with the programs that we have going on now. We actually have a local freedom crisis line that's about to go live, has decals and everything. When that goes live, that decal will be on our Facebook page and our website, so that you can see the hotline. It also, on the decal, it will have the National Human Trafficking Hotline, because we want to honor those who went before us, so that it is recorded that you have called into that hotline. And then we have the local crisis line, our line, Freedom Crisis Line, underneath it. We have this month we have a training for the Freedom Crisis Line, and also a training for transportation on safety of transporting a victim survivor, whether it be to a local facility or a over the state line facility, because we partner with Alabama, Tennessee, and North Mississippi, New Orleans area as well. So that's not a problem. We partner with those. And then we also have this month, at the end of the month, we will be having a fundraiser. Okay, fundraiser. And
Yay.
I like fundraisers because I know where the money's going. You know what I'm saying? For a good cause. And it's called Mama's Got a New Bag. So we've asked people to donate gently used designer bags
Or new bags.
or new bags, bring them on, to help in having an auction, filling them up with jewelry that's been given to us by people who are very talented and they do this for a living. And we also have a special gift, surprise gift, worth $550 inside one of the purses that are auctioned off.
Mm,
So
wow.
all those pictures and everything of all the purses and the piece of jewelry that will be secretly hidden in one of the purses will be all shown live at the end of the month. We'll do a preset prior to going live with that.
Wow. And all this money is to help the mission of Jubilee Havens.
Correct.
Good stuff. I'll be making y'all make sure y'all tune in. Make sure y'all tune in at the end of the month for this auction. We have some nice purses, and just so people know, Sharon, she is the founder and executive director of Jubilee Havens here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And if you need to reach out to her, you can contact her via the website, which is www.jubileehavens, JUBILEEHAVENS.com, or you can contact her via email, which is jubileehavens2016@gmail.com. So, Sharon, I just want to say thank you so much for your heart. Thank you so much for coming on the show as my special guest to share your personal story, of being a victim, now a survivor who has overcome and been pushed into her mission to help other people become overcomers as well, and not be sold for sex. So I appreciate you. The world appreciates you, and I know God truly appreciates you because you're doing his work. This, like you said, it was a God moment. And then what you do, you took it and you owned it and you said, okay, God, I got it. So thank you so much for saying yes, to God and walking this out, walking in your truth and walking in your purpose.
It's been my honor.
So do you have any last minute comments or anything you want to say before we close the show?
Well, I just hope that everyone that sees this hears my heart for the mission of Jubilee Havens and to help, people who have been sex trafficked into a better place to, like you said, overcome and no longer have a victim mentality or be a victim, but know their purpose in the life that was given them. And they're still alive for a very purpose. And they just need to find out what that purpose is. And you can only get it through healing.
Amen. Thank you so much for those words. And so, everyone, if you just tuned in, please go back and catch the replay. Sharon's story is very powerful, and it's going to help somebody who actually takes the time out to actually listen to it from the beginning to the end. Thank you so much again, Sharon. And tune in with us every Thursday on a Dr. Yolanda Jerry Show at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be here again next Thursday with another special guest. And remember, if nobody has told you that they love you, know that I love you, and most of all, God loves you. Take care and be blessed. And we'll see you again here next Thursday.